Bonjour à tous. So I'm going to actually switch to English for this introduction. So good morning everyone and welcome to Insomni'hack 2017 or Insomni'hack 10. As you probably know, this is the 10th edition of our initially ethical hacking contest, which has grown to something a little bit bigger nowadays. Before handing the stage over to the various speakers of the day, I just wanted to say a couple of words. First off, I wanted to thank a few people and start with my friends and colleagues at SCRT, past and present, who have spent hours of their free time making this event what it is nowadays. I mean, we wouldn't be here without them. Obviously, I also wanted to thank all our sponsors and partners who make the event what it is nowadays. For those of you who remember the first edition, it was nothing like what you see today, and I'll get to that in a second. But I also want to thank all of you for being here, obviously, because without you, well, Insomni'hack wouldn't exist. Now, I wanted to quickly roll back the years and have a look at how we've evolved from the first edition in 2008 all the way up to today. Now, some of you may remember what happened back in 2008. For me, I was actually essentially stumbling around the corridors at TPFL, and I noticed this poster on the wall, and I was like, ethical hacking contest, that looks fun. So I showed up, and it was actually held at the cafeteria in SCRT's office building. So there were about 50 or 60 people there, hacking on their laptops. I was one of them. I'm actually hidden here in the second, just behind the up, which some of you might recognize despite the great work that was done on the image. Interestingly enough, I came in fourth position that year, just barely missing out on the first prize, which was a quantum-based random number generator. So I was very sad, as you can imagine, that I didn't get that. Anyways, 2008 was also the year of MS 0867, which some of you probably still know. I mean, it made many a pen tester very happy throughout the years, and probably still nowadays. So this was quite interesting. We had about 50 or 60 people at this first Insomni'hack, and I was hired at SCRT just a couple of months afterwards. And by 2009, we'd already decided that the cafeteria in Prévonge was not good enough, or not big enough, and we moved to the École d'Ingénieurs, not far away, and near the train station here in Geneva. In 2009, we had about 100 participants there. And I think one of the most memorable moments of this edition was maybe one of the most iconic challenges at Insomni'hack that some of you probably still remember because it was brilliant by its simplicity and, I guess, utter randomness as well. We handed out this image to the participants, and essentially the answer is, as you can see, the little icicles hanging from the roof here, which actually spell out something in Morse code. And, well, I think a lot of people hated us for a while after that one. But I quite liked it because essentially anybody can solve it, but you just have to be a little bit lucky in thinking in the right way. So by the next year, one of the things we noticed was that it was kind of difficult for us to judge how difficult the challenge was, because when you're preparing a challenge, most of the time you think it's a lot easier than it really is. So by 2010, we started playing with this adaptive scoring system, essentially where we allowed participants to kind of choose how important the challenge is by simply defining that when more people score a challenge, the less points it will give you. Unfortunately, we had a couple problems with this as well, because yours truly is not really a very good developer, and we had a lot of problems with the SQL connections, and for half the contest, people couldn't actually access the scoreboard for a pretty obvious problem. And it took us ages to figure out what was going on. We thought it was a problem with the network, and we got very annoyed about it. But in the end, it was all down to my SQL queries. And we've learned from our mistakes, and I no longer prepare the scoreboard. We had about 150 participants in this edition, and the winner this time got a great luminous shower handle, which I'm sure my colleague Florian was still happy to have. And from that then on, I'd like to thank also Coca for providing a lot of these prizes. Despite the fact we laugh about them, they're still always fun to get something when you participate and win. So 2011 marked the first year when we had conferences. and it was a big step for us. It was pretty practical to be at the school in Geneva because they had the room for it and everything. So that was really nice to have. Started off with these conferences. For the contest itself, we played with something a little bit different. We wanted people to come and solve the challenges with an RFID chip. Some of you may remember that, having come to our desk and everything. Because actually, up until this year, you couldn't actually score your challenges in the scoreboard. You actually had to come up to us at the desk and tell us what the solution was and explain how you got to it. So it's a bit cumbersome, but people accepted it and kept on doing that. So we're pretty happy. The major event in 2011 is that we finally provided internet access to participants. Up to then, it was kind of unfair because people who had like 3G phones in Switzerland were very much easier off than others. But believe it or not, people do not want to provide internet access for hacking contests or hacking events because apparently people believe that hackers will wait to be at the hacking contest to start hacking. So finally we set up a solution with NIMAG, and I'd like to thank them as well for providing the internet access for pretty much every edition since then. And I'm sure all the participants of the contest are very happy about that because it was a bit difficult without it. Now, if we move on to 2012, kind of marked the end of our famous steganography challenges with this one, which was probably the most random challenge I've ever seen. You just had to essentially pick the first letter of every item on the image, which didn't actually spell out anything, it was just a random text, and that was the solution. So we have forbidden the person who made this one to ever do any challenges afterwards, much to the delight of the participants. And this also marked the first year where we could actually score challenges automatically through the scoreboard. You didn't have to come up to us, so it was a lot easier. And we actually had a bit more time to relax during the event itself, which was great. So that was the last year at the École d'Ingénieurs. And in 2013 we moved to here in Palexpo, which was probably one of the bigger moves we had because it's allowed us a lot more room, a lot more space, as you can see. We finally were able to get about 300 participants at the contest, which is a pretty good improvement from the previous years. We also added some workshops for the first time. So if you don't know, we have workshops now on the previous day, on Thursday. We also started having some pretty funky prizes you can see here for the winners of the contests. As for the conferences, we probably had our first real superstar in form of Charlie Miller, as some of you may remember. But for me personally, what marked me was that we spent an awful lot of time preparing this wonderful little booklet for the contest, which explained the rules, the scoring system, and how everything was going to go on throughout the contest. So we printed out like hundreds of them at our offices. We got here and realized we'd forgotten them at the office, so nobody ever saw them. So that was a bit of a fail on our part. Then we moved to 2014, where we tried our first online teaser. So if you don't know about this, a couple months, usually during January, we have a small teaser online with various challenges that you can do, and we invite the first 3 or 4, 5 or 6 teams. It also marked the beginning of the Dragon Sector era, who have been dominating the contest ever since, and they're here again this year. We'll see if anybody can finally beat them. We also had Mikko Hipponen speaking at the conferences, which he gave a great talk, which I was very happy to hear. We started giving out gold for the winners of the CTF, which was pretty cool. I thought it was very Swiss of us. And one of the major issues we had during the contest that year was with the scoring system, which wasn't my fault for once. But essentially, MSLC had found a way that if they submitted the same flag multiple times, fast enough, it was essentially a race condition in the scoreboard, they could actually score the points multiple times. So they jumped up in the scoreboard. Dragon Sector were very quick to react and come to us and complain. But we were like, oh, what's happening? We have no idea. But we did figure out what was going on, corrected it. Can't remember if we gave MSLC some bonus points or not. But everything went well in the end. So in 2015, I guess one of the major things we noticed during the conference is that we had difficulties figuring out who would want to see which conference, and we put Dragon Sector presenting their talk in one of the small rooms here, and pretty much everybody wanted to see that one, so it was overcrowded, a bit of a bit of a problem. So we always try to make sure, or we try to get the right people in the right rooms. We'll see if it gets any better this year. But contest-wise, it actually went pretty well. So as organizers, it was kind of boring actually, we're just sitting there drinking beers. So it was fun in another way, I guess. Last year, we got to about 400 participants for the contest, which is probably one of the bigger on-site CTFs in Europe, if not in the world. Instead of giving gold, because gold is not very practical to share between 8 participants, we started giving out silver, which there's a lot more of it. We finally started calculating how much time we spent preparing Insomni'hack, and we came up with about 1,200 hours of preparation, and that's without counting the time spent on the site on our private hours. And yet we're still incapable of finishing the contest until about 5 minutes before we start playing it. We're lucky enough to have the room below us now, which is pretty cool with the red lights and everything. Gives us a lot more room to host the participants and can actually prepare the room a lot earlier during the day. Before this, we had to essentially prepare the whole stuff like 1 hour before the contest. Like, we had to wait until the conference ended before we could set up the tables, the switches and everything. It was a nightmare. And since last year, we can actually do this during the day, so we have a lot more time to do this. Finally, this year, we had over 1,000 teams registered for the online teaser, and we compared to DEF CON and their qualifications, we have 1,300. We're getting close, so that's pretty cool. If we look on the comfort side, on the other hand, we have about 400, all of you essentially, registered for the conference, so we're only about, I don't know, 20,000 short of DEF CON. We were actually sold out already a week ago, so we're definitely going to need some more space next year if we want to continue growing a little bit. For the first, I'm going to try and manage expectations a little bit here, but we're going to attempt to film the various talks and put them online afterwards. So look out for that. If you're not able to follow all the talks today, you can probably find them online afterwards. As for the contest itself, we have a couple new things in there. We have an exploit room that you'll discover this evening. Might even have some social engineering in there. And we actually have a full FPS game that you'll be able to play, and who knows, maybe cheat a little bit in the game tonight. So I hope you're looking forward to all of this. The last thing I want to say is that next year Insomni'hack will be, you can already pencil it into your agenda on the 22nd and 23rd of March 2018. And that pretty much concludes what I had to say. And with no further ado, I'll hand the stage over to Stefan Lüders for the first talk of the day.